Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So tomorrow I am going to be doing my first ever triathlon. And in this video, I'm going to take you through everything that I'm going to be using on race day. And I'm going to sort it from least expensive to most expensive, and hopefully we can dispel the myth that triathlon is a ridiculously expensive sport. So a bit of background, I am doing a sprint triathlon as a warm-up event for my main goal of the summer, which is a half Ironman triathlon. So the sprint triathlon I'm doing is a 400-meter swim followed by a 20-kilometer bike ride and then a 5K run. Not the longest event, but it's still my first ever competitive triathlon. So the reason for doing a shorter one like this is just to get some practice in, like doing transitions and getting a feel for how the event goes. All right, so first up, costing a grand total of £0 is this swim cap. I have no idea where this came from. I just found it in a cupboard. So it's nice that some things don't have to cost a lot of money. But to be honest with you, I'm not even sure if I'm going to use this on race day. I've been training in a pool and I've not even used the swim cap for that. So I might just let the hair go free, because it's just one less thing to have to worry about. All right, next up are these energy gels. So these come in at about £1 each if you do some searching around the internet. So you don't need to spend a lot of money on these, just get whichever ones agree with your stomach. Make sure you try them out before race day, otherwise you might end up having to go to the loo in a field somewhere. A sprint triathlon is pretty short. I'm hoping to finish it in about an hour and 15 minutes. So I'm not 100% sure whether I'm even going to use it. So I'm just going to attach them to my bike, and if I need them on the day, I will take them. If not, I'll just leave them. So if you shop around for these, you can find some good deals. I find that sites such as Wiggle, Decathlon, Amazon, you can normally find good deals on them. They're very useful to have, especially on long runs and cycles. When it gets over an hour, you need to have some nutrition, so these are a good shout. Just make sure you practice with them in your training. Don't have race day being the first day you try these, because like I said, they might not agree with your stomach. Right, next up we have my running socks. Again, these are pretty cheap, coming in at like £5. So having a good pair of running socks is quite important. When I first started running, I would just run in normal socks and I would get so many blisters. But with these running socks, they're specially designed so that they're tight around the areas where you're going to get chafing. So make sure you get yourself a pair of running socks. You don't need to spend a lot. Like I said, Decathlon, a £5, you can't really go wrong. So my plan is to put these on after the swim and then wear them during the bike portion and the run portion. All right, moving on, we have my swimming goggles. So I am very new to swimming. So I started swimming properly about 2 months ago. I had a really old pair of swimming goggles and they just let so much water in. So I got these from, again, Decathlon, £17.99. Pretty cheap, can't go wrong. I like that they're so big and you can see it really easily out of them. I'm not sure if they're actually good goggles or anything like that, but so far so good. For the amount of swimming I'm doing, they do just fine. Maybe when I do some longer events, I will shop around and see if I can find something a bit better. Okay, moving on. So this is my cycling helmet here. This cost me about £20, but I bought it when I was living abroad. So yeah, no fancy aero helmet for me. Like I said, just getting into triathlon, so I'm not going to spend loads of money on a fancy aero helmet when I don't know if I'll even need it. Also, the event I'm doing, the bike is only 20 kilometers, so it's not that much time for an aero helmet to make a big difference. But for 20 quid, you can't really go wrong. It's got lots of holes for ventilation and it's comfy and protects my head, which is really all you can ask for in a helmet. Right, moving on, and now getting into the good stuff. And again, Decathlon comes through clutch. So this is my tri-suit. £40 from Decathlon for a tri-suit. You really can't go wrong. I've been using this in training and getting lots of test swims, test rides in it, and so far so good. It's been pretty damn solid. So the real question is whether this will hold up on race day and whether it will be comfortable doing all 3 disciplines in one go. So hopefully I won't get any chafing, no rubbing, nothing like that. I've got the pockets on the back so that I can hold my phone and the gels during the run and the bike. So yeah, I'll see if this holds up during my short triathlon, and if it doesn't, I might have to go for a more expensive tri-suit, but if it holds up well, then I'm not going to change it. All right, moving on. Next up, we have a heart rate monitor. This is a Garmin HRM Pro. So this is the first item that isn't strictly necessary. You could get away with not having one of these, but it might make your life a bit more difficult. I know you can get cheaper heart rate monitors, but I've always used the Garmin ones and they've been rock solid for me. I did try using a cheaper one before, but it just kept cutting out. So like I said, you don't strictly need one of these. You could just run on feel without your heart rate, but I am not skilled enough to do that. This is mainly for when I'm on the bike and I'll have this connected to my bike computer. I'm also running with my smartwatch, but I'll talk about that more later. So having a heart rate monitor is quite useful because you want to make sure you're running within yourself. You don't want to go all out at the beginning and then run out of energy and have nothing left in the tank for the last parts. All right, we're getting into the more expensive stuff now, almost at 3 digits. So these are my running shoes, £94. These are Asics Nova Blast 3s. So running shoes are obviously something you can't go without in a triathlon unless you want to go barefoot like a madman. But yeah, I've been using these Asics shoes for quite a while. I find them pretty comfortable. They're designed for heavier runners like myself. You've got lots of cushioning here. And in all the time I've been using it, I've used this for a full marathon, a half marathon. And during the full marathon, I did get a bit of a black toe. But since then, I think my feet have toughened up. And to be honest, these are pretty good for everything I've thrown at them. The good thing about them is they're not too expensive. They're not like £300 shoes, which I could not justify at all. But for just under 100 quid, you can't really go wrong. Shoes are definitely somewhere you want to make sure you practice with a lot before your event. If you're wearing shoes that aren't comfortable, you're definitely going to be going to Blister City. Right, next up we have an item which is a potential area where you could save a bit of money. So I'm talking about these sunglasses right here. These are Oakley Sutros and they are quite expensive for what they are, to be honest, over £100. And to be honest, a £20 pair of sunglasses would do you just as well. But I already had these, so I'm gonna rock them anyway. Again, you could probably get away with not wearing any sunglasses, but on the bike portion especially, you're gonna get insects and wind going in your eye, so I'd recommend wearing at least something. It doesn't even have to be sport-specific sunglasses. You could probably just get away with any pair of sunglasses whatsoever. All right, moving up in price, we have my trusty Garmin 530 bike computer. When I got this new, it must have been like £300–400, but now this is a generation old, so you could probably get these for like maybe less than £200. You don't even need an expensive Garmin one. You could definitely get away with a cheaper bike computer, which just shows you your basic info. But I already had this before I started getting into triathlon, so obviously I'm just gonna use this one. So on race day, I'm going to be recording the event on my smartwatch, but what I'm gonna do is just have this loaded up with the bike course on it to make sure I don't get lost. Also, it is a lot easier to see your stats on the bike computer than it is to look at your watch while you're trying to ride. So a bike computer is a good, useful thing to have, and I would recommend getting even a cheap one. All right, next up, we have another needlessly expensive item. So these are my bike shoes. These are Specialized Recons, and these are the shoes I used before I even started getting into triathlon. So previously I had a really cheap pair of bike shoes and they were so flexible I could just bend them. But these ones are a bit more expensive, around £200, but they are so much better. There's no flex whatsoever in them, which means all your power will be transferred to the pedals, and they are really, really comfortable. They have lots of vents in them, which you can see here. This is quite useful for the summer, especially because your feet won't get cold whatsoever, but in the winter it's quite annoying because I have to cover my shoes up with those over boot thingies. But yeah, again, an item you don't need to spend a load of money on. I had these before I got into triathlon, and having spent loads of money on them, I hope they last me for ages. I know you can get triathlon specific bike shoes, but for someone just getting into it, I don't think it's worth the money. Do a few events first and see if you stick with it before dropping loads of cash. Right, so on to the penultimate item. This is where it gets expensive. This is my Garmin Fenix 7 smartwatch. It's a pretty fancy thing, but at the moment my life is just trying to get fit, so I don't mind spending a bit of money on a smartwatch. Having a smartwatch is very, very useful. Obviously you don't actually need one to run an event, but I think for most of us, you want to see your pace, you want to see your heart rate, you want to see all of that data to make sure you're pacing yourself correctly. Of course, you could just go without one and just run by feel, but I am incapable of doing that. Anyway, if you're just getting into triathlons, don't feel the need to spend like £500 on a smartwatch. They do sell much cheaper ones for like £100, or probably even less if you're willing to go with a used one. And to be honest, they have 99% of the features that you might need. I used to have a Fenix 5, which I got for about £100, and then I had an Instinct 2X, and both of those would have done the job just as well as this one. So yeah, like I said, don't feel the need to spend loads of money right when you're starting out. All right, finally, we have the most expensive item, and that is clearly going to be the bike. So this is my trusty Trek Domane AL3. So this is not a triathlon bike, it's just a regular endurance road bike. So again, it's quite expensive. This was about £1,000. I've changed the group set. I've put on SRAM Rival and I've got a set of carbon wheels. YouTube privilege meant I didn't have to pay for those, so that was quite nice. But like I said, this is not a triathlon bike. It's not particularly aero. I can't get that low on it. But first ever triathlon, I'm not going to go out and buy a triathlon bike. That would be ridiculous because those are very expensive. So like I said, the bike portion is only 20k, and in that short distance, you can't really get that much of an advantage using a specialized bike. So sticking with what you already have is pretty good. So it's worth noting that my event is also on open roads. For that reason, I always want to have my hands near the brakes. I know on a triathlon bike, you have to put your arms close like this to get yourself aero, but with the cars on the road, anything can happen. I always want to be near the brakes just for safety. All right, so we're pretty much finished. Just one more thing. Make sure when you're doing an event like this, not to get bogged down with all the equipment things. You could do a triathlon or most sporting events with very little equipment. The most important thing is definitely training and making sure you're in good shape to do the event. I'm sure there will be people on the race day overtaking me on much, much cheaper bikes, probably without any of this fancy stuff. So yeah, don't get yourself bogged down with spending loads of money. Just make sure you get yourself out there and try your best to enjoy your event. So if any seasoned triathletes have any tips for me on what I can improve or how I can improve without spending that much money, be sure to whack the comments down below. I will really appreciate it. My event is tomorrow, so hopefully next week I will be getting a video up about how it went. And if you want to see that, be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.